A recent propaganda article from the Christchurch Press covered a story about the rise of political awareness and resistance to the Marxist doctrine being shoved down the throats of students in post-primary education. At last, there are signs that our sons and daughters, or grandies as the case may be, are rightly fighting back and resisting the programming of radical left indoctrination. Now, some captured Marxist teachers of the Post-Primary Teachers Association are not happy with this shift back to orthodoxy. They believe that the only socio-political ideology that should be expressed by students should defer to their Marxist ideals, things like encouraging gender delusion, sympathy for terrorist organisations like Hamas, victimhood recognition for feudal rangatira class Maoris, and so on and so on. The media article traverses an opinion piece masqueraded as a report written by an art teacher, Paul Stevens. As well as teaching art, Paul is the PPTA Auckland Regional Chairperson. He presented his opinion piece at the recent PPTA conference in Christchurch. Paul also says that he wants to be a role model for his students by being openly gay in his classroom. The headline of the media article covering Paul's opinion piece starts by framing the renaissance of orthodox conservative values, common sense and critical thinking as extremism. Look at this. Extremism is a major and radical departure from normally accepted standards and practices. Given that orthodox conservative values, Western practices, and the nuclear family have been widely and successfully adopted for many thousands of years, they cannot be reasonably characterized as extremist. They are in fact mainstream. And they're certainly not extremist compared to radical far-left ideology, which includes actual extremism, such as gender delusion, actual extremism such as support of terrorism, actual extremism such as Indigenous victimhood programming, actual extremism because these values and these practices have only been around for about the last 5 minutes, and they are already causing chaos and havoc. Paul is quite clearly gaslighting. He's projecting extremism onto conservative-minded students who prefer to marry an actual woman, one that has a womb, settle down, raise kids, work hard, and live a good life. So in Paul's mind, the guy sitting in the chair advocating for that lifestyle is an extremist. But what about the lefty on the roof with the rifle, Paul? What's he? Listen to this.
Secondary school teachers in New Zealand are witnessing an alarming rise in extremism among students, with young men particularly susceptible to misogynistic ideologies promoted by figures like Andrew Tait.
So Andrew Tait is misogynistic, complains Paul, but while Paul complains about Andrew Tait's attitude towards women, at the same time he wears a virtue-signalling lapel button in support of Hamas with its hardline Islamic ideology. And while I don't defend him, I've never seen Andrew Tait stoning a woman to death for adultery or marrying a 6-year-old. Paul's lack of insight just couldn't be any more jolting. Here we have an exhibitionist gay boy wearing a badge in support of a culture that, even given half a chance, wouldn't hesitate for a second to throw him off the top of the nearest building. He's literally a turkey arguing for Christmas. Paul is displaying a complete paucity of critical thinking and cogency by wheeling out Andrew Tait as an icon of misogyny, while at the same time wearing a badge in support of an ideology that exterminates gay people and frankly treats common or garden house camels better than it treats women. Listen to this rubbish.
When students use language or terms that are dog whistles from the manosphere, this is misogyny, this is hate speech, and it shouldn't be acceptable in our schools without being challenged.
As is usual for this type of subjective opinion piece masquerading as a report, Paul does not state in his propaganda the actual words that he thinks are hate speech. There are no examples given, not even a single one. He goes on to say,
the recent Netflix series, Adolescence, was likely the first exposure for many people as to how extremism is playing out with teenagers and in schools.
The Netflix show Adolescence is a fictional drama, and Andrew Tait in Adolescence is a real-life character lifted from internet sources and placed in a totally fictional context. This is literally conflating fiction and reality by embedding the reality of Andrew Tait into a fictional storyline. Now, contrary to what Paul says, nobody could be exposed to how extremism is playing out with teenagers and in schools by watching adolescents, because this show is fictional, it's not real. And pointing to a fictional television drama as evidence of reality lacks cogency. Fiction is of zero probative value to the arguments that Paul's making. He's literally asking us to accept that a movie named Cinderella is evidence that if you're not in bed by midnight, your VW Golf's going to transform into a vegetable. He goes on,
Young students strutting around as the Trump boys or submitting social science assignments with trad wife ideologies. The issue has reached a tipping point in the past 2 years.
So according to Paul, supporting Donald Trump and discussing traditional roles of men and women in orthodox Western culture is now hate speech. The amount of students resisting leftist indoctrination and favouring a normal, loving married relationship that their parents enjoyed is reaching what Paul thinks is a tipping point. Actually, Paul, it's not a tipping point, it's a turning point. A turning point in our schools, a turning point that has no future for rainbow flags, no future for Indigenous victimhood, no future for supporting terrorism, and no enabling of neo-Marxist soy boys to inject their filthy sewage into the minds of our innocent children. And Paul points to one good thing, that some of the unhinged lefties are finally getting the message and leaving the teaching profession.
Teachers now regularly encounter students who have been radicalised through algorithm-driven social media platforms, and some are leaving the profession because of it.
That's an absolute win, and we'll take it, thanks, Paul. Join them. Pack up your rainbow flags and your Hamas badges. Take your Maori insurrection tiki and your other virtue-signalling paraphernalia. Wipe the churlish look of indignant, patronising disapproval off your pasty, pimply face and close the door behind you. Now, it's not often that I'm surprised by the sewage that leaks from the mouths of these far-left extremists, but this one's a doozy. Be warned, I lost my coffee over this. It's pretty bad. I recommend being seated. This is what Paul had the absolute barefaced audacity to say.
Our classrooms are not ideological battlegrounds. They are spaces for learning, empathy and growth.
Can you believe that? An art teacher wearing virtue-signalling tokenism in support of terrorism, gender delusion and Indigenous victimhood says that our classrooms are not ideological battlegrounds. They are spaces for learning, empathy and growth, says Paul. As long as you're not a conservative thinker, of course. Yes, they are. Our classrooms are ideological battlegrounds, Paul. They are ideological battlegrounds because that's what your ideology made them. You made them that with your rainbow trans flags, with your treaty revisionism, with your tokenism and tikis, with your virtue signalling and with your deviancy. They're the battlegrounds where the minds of our young people will be saved from your extremism. Now here again is another example of what Paul characterises as hate speech.
A young student might submit an assignment, make a strong argument they probably see as coherent, presented in a persuasive manner to meet an assignment's criteria, but the argument is effectively about a traditional wife arguing that a woman's role is meant to be in the household raising children.
So an assignment that makes a strong argument, which Paul does not criticise as incoherent, an assignment that is both persuasive and meets the assignment criteria, that assignment is hate speech. It's hate speech because it argues that there's merit in the nuclear family and the ideology that has ensured the survival of our species for the last 100,000 odd years. No, Paul, it's not hate speech. It's speech that you disagree with. It's speech that doesn't suit your agenda. It's speech that doesn't conform to your twisted, deviant neo-Marxist ideology. And that's the only reason why you're having a wee infantile tantrums about it. Paul's opinion piece, which he masquerades as a report, raises grave concerns over the entry requirements to the teaching profession. Even a soy-saturated, discombobulated art teacher with a critical thinking disability like Paul can negatively influence the impressionable minds of young students. The problem's not so much the conservative students. They'll be the confident critical thinkers. They can dismantle Paul's kinds of rubbish quicker than a Destiny church team can paint a rainbow crossing. The problem is the vulnerable kids, the ones who don't have strong conservative parental support and guidance, or worse, the ones addled with socialist parents. Maybe we should have a character test for teachers to weed out the ideologues like Paul before they can get into the heads of their young victims. Those are my views. Leave a comment and let Paul know what you think of the idea that orthodox conservatism is extremism and discussing Western cultural values is hate speech. Thanks for watching. Give us a like, would you, and do hit subscribe to be notified of new content as it drops. See you next time.